All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of O365A. In this episode, we have our friends from Numonix on again. So this time around, we have Michael Levy, who's the CEO of Numonix, here to chat with us about their call recording product and sort of give us some of the insights of sort of what has been going on with them over the past year. So, Michael, why don't you introduce yourself first, and then we'll pass it over to Dino.
Thank you, Habib. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm Michael. I'm from Numonix. I pretty much head up much of our sales organization, as well as our administrative function and all the good stuff in the back end that no one else wants to deal with. So that's really, from my point of view, been in the recording industry for some time now, and in the Microsoft space for just as long, being, from the Lync days, where we were one of the first partners who were in the Lync program, also Skype for Business. And now, chasing the dream with Teams. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome, Michael. So, it's been a year since we last talked to you folks. So maybe take us through like what's been going on in the last year besides this terrible pandemic that we've been in.
Yeah, well, I think obviously the pandemic has been devastating for everyone, but I think there have been opportunities realized in a lot of industries from it, and one of them being Teams. If you look at the adoption rate of people using Microsoft Teams, and not only the adoption rate, but the actual usage rate, we've seen usage go up from the typical user in a UC environment to almost the same usage as a contact center user. So people being at home now using Teams, the usage has been driven through the roof. And for us, especially, people have the requirement now even more to monitor communications for those users, not only from a compliance point of view, but also from a purely internal compliance or performance point of view. Because when someone's at home, how do you track? How do you understand what they're doing? People aren't meeting in office hallways anymore. People aren't in boardrooms. So everyone's communicating via Teams, and they're wanting to capture it. So for us, that's been, obviously a benefit. And the Teams API, which has now been released for just over a year, May 19th last year was the go live date. We've seen usage increase dramatically. We've seen the products evolve dramatically, because just from a base product recording everything to pesky things like the advanced comms license that originally came out, change. But really evolve as well to more stable product and a much easier to use recording integration than your typical legacy integrations.
Yeah, that's right. And you mentioned the advanced communication license. So maybe just for the benefit of our audience, talk about what that change was, and just a brief overview on that.
Sure. So originally, there was this advanced comms SKU, which was made as a requirement in order to be able to make use of the compliance recording API and some other features within Teams, which were enabled by third-party application vendors. The price was relatively steep, and from enough, let's call it collaborative push from the partners, from the Microsoft ecosystem, Microsoft decided to drop that requirement. And as opposed to that requirement, they introduced just the requirement to have certain level Office SKUs, Office E3, E5, Business Premium, A3, A5. So pretty much anyone who would need to record already has the SKU that they would need, because those are just common SKUs you would need if you were in an enterprise or in any environment that might have a requirement for recording. So that was a great relief, and again, driven adoption, because we did see a big pause during that period where it was made known. But as soon as that was, released and opened up, the adoption drove up again.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So with that, maybe if we can talk high level of how the plumbing works for Numonix to connect into the Teams recording API. I know there's recording bots that maybe follow users. Is there still requirements for every user to have a bot follow them into a meeting, and maybe some of that high level architecture?
Sure. So the standard architecture is really an easy one relative if you're going to record Cisco or Avaya or Port Mirror or anything like that. installation and deployment is really, can take less than 30 minutes for smaller clients. I know coming from the Skype for Business background, if you deployed someone with 300 users, that could be a 3-month project. You could pretty much do the plumbing on a Teams recording for 300 users in less than an hour. So typically what's involved from the team side is just doing an admin consent URL, granting the bot or into your enterprise apps. You would then create an application instance, a recording policy, and then either you can assign the policy to a user or to a recording group. That's as simple as it is. That's needed to be done. From the other end of things is once you have a user who is targeted for recording, any call that they go into, there's a policy check. It says, hey, yes, you're a user that needs to be recorded. We then invite a bot into the call invisibly as a participant. Now, traditionally, it was always one participant per bot. There are some new evolution coming to that now that you're grouping bots, that you can identify bots from the same or users from the same domain and group all those users into a single bot to reduce that participant count. But every bot is silent and invisible in the conversation, so no one knows they're there. And then that bot obviously streams the media and metadata back to the recorder where it's present. And in our case, it's a fully Azure Service Fabric based platform. So there's no requirements for VMs or anything of that nature. Scalability is easy. Upping from 100 to 500 to 1,000 users is just really, really seamless. So it's a really simple and easy process. Recording is typically for every modality, or let's not call it modality, for every scenario. So a user who has a policy and is targeted will record internal, PSTN, federated, mobile, any type of Teams call scenario. We have made some evolution to that as well, where we in our platform have a recording filter or for recording rules that we're able to granularly pick out of that and restrict what to record, because what we're seeing as well, and not to be too long-winded, but we're seeing it in Europe especially, that people don't want to record everything. They only want maybe PSTN, because there might be those internal HR type calls where someone calls HR and complains about a manager who might have access to their recordings. That's private and personal communication internally, that's protected, so they don't want to record it. So we've built a rules engine basically where you can, by group in the organization, determine what you want to record and when you want to record it, which is been extremely beneficial to clients.
That's
and sorry to add one more thing. One of the very special features we've brought, which is pretty unique to us, is even the ability to target recording meetings based on a custom keyword in the calendar invite. So you can say, I'm designating this meeting organizer, I'm designating this word, record or record this or whatever it may be, and only when a user creates a meeting and they're an approved user and they have the word record this or record in the calendar invite for that meeting, will it record. Otherwise, it won't record. As well as the converse, where we can restrict recording based on a word in the calendar invite. So you can see the evolution from just being record everything, load up some users on a tenant basis, now just being able to open up the gates to give flexibility to anything.
So, I mean, that's a really awesome segue to my question. It's where do you think that things are going from a recording perspective outside of this new scheduling and keyword perspective?
So what I think where it's going, and we're going there too, is even though Microsoft or Teams has convenience recording included, when you click the 3 dots, you can maybe record certain call scenarios and it's entered into SharePoint. What I'm seeing a lot of is customers that might have 10,000 users on Teams and saying, listen, we have a compliance group of 50 that need to be recorded. Some of the new things we're releasing is like record on demand in our compliance environment, where we're using the Teams meeting client extension to target and start and stop recording. So you're now opening that convenience recording into a more compliance environment where you can do it and record ad hoc, but it stores it in a secure way, encrypted digital signature alongside all your compliance calls, and centralizing it as opposed to leaving it in the hands of individual users. So we're seeing a tremendous uptick in that use case because companies are more willing to give that click on demand, like you might record a meeting ad hoc or a call ad hoc. So we're seeing many different use cases evolving. We're seeing the general user becoming the contact center user. So although they might be using contact center applications, they're using our recorder to record contact center applications, back office. They're using it in basically all environments. So it really is expanding greatly into the organization and enterprise. And then also different modalities, like we do audio, we do video, we do screen sharing. Chat using a different API is still in beta, the chat API, but that will be released as well. So we want to be seen as the single unified capture engine for all your Teams communications and screen sharing interactions, if you want to call it that.
Awesome. And that's a good segue, Michael, into what I wanted to ask about. Obviously, you're bound somewhat by what the APIs expose and what they make available. I know the Teams call recording API was under development for a long time and preview for a while. Can you just talk about how it's changed and sort of what changes you see coming or you hope that are coming to enable Numonix or all call recording vendors to do what they need to do?
Yeah, so there have been changes and evolution to it with regards to even basic things like the announcement. So you have a built-in announcement service to announce that the call has been recorded or not. What they've recently introduced a couple months ago is the ability to turn off the audible one and only keep only keep the banner in the Teams app, because even just from experience, that audible announcement on the outbound PSTN call can be pretty invasive, especially when you're calling someone who doesn't know it's you. They think it's a robocall and might put on the call. So there's been some enhancements to the recording API or announcement API. There's been enhancements, as I've mentioned, to bot grouping so that you could group bots instead of, make one-to-one relationship with bots. So we're seeing reliability strengthened with the bots. We're seeing one of the major things we've also seen improve a lot is that delay or lag to answer a call. That's something that's improved dramatically. At the risk of breaking any NDAs with Microsoft on future items coming out, but there are a few enhancements that almost have been restricting factors with many clients in terms of ring initially with the API. If you were enabled for recording, a ring would not ring as a normal ring. It would be it would change it so people didn't understand who they were calling. So Microsoft is slowly evolving it based on partner feedback, but not even from the API point of view. I think us as partners are becoming smarter around the API to be able to design features and functionality around the API as opposed to relying solely on Microsoft to develop features within the API.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm sure as this whole space evolves, the APIs will catch up. And like you said, vendors will start to do bigger and better things just outside of the API, which has me wondering, from a management perspective, something like your solution, does it have a management interface where you can see the number of calls, videos recorded, who it was recorded, length of time, and all that?
Absolutely. So in the actual user interface, which is you can access, it's browser based, it's through the internet. You can see how many calls were recorded for the day, for the month, the hour. You can see, how much storage you've consumed in our platform. We have built-in storage, which is allocated to every client, and they can add additional storage if they want to. In addition, we have bring your own storage, where clients can bring their own Azure Blob storage to the platform in 3 different ways. And then also you can go and search for calls by different criteria, by the meeting name, by comments you might have made, by transcription. We're automatically transcribing calls. You can play back video in all modalities in one interface. So if you want to see voice, or hear the voice, you want to see the video, screen sharing, play them all back You can share links to calls. So traditionally in premise-based recording, let's say there was a requirement for someone to listen to a call. The only ways to do that was either export it in an MP3 or WAV file or MP4, or give someone access to your actual interface or a login credential. Now we have the abilities to share links to calls with time-based expiration of links. We have within our product profiles, which you can do custom retention policies, custom security policies based on roles access and to the system. And then this new one for the recording profile, we have the recording engine where you're able to granularly within a profile do various things like restrict inbound, outbound, PSTN only, meetings, targeting call queues. So we can also say, let's target these call queues by object ID for these users. So you can also say, I'm targeting a group of 100 users, but only record those calls coming through specific call queues. Also, the ability to turn that announcement I mentioned on and off by group within the interface itself. So not relying on back end scripting or anything like that, or config files to do things like that. So the platform is evolving, rapidly as we go along. Our roadmap is extremely developed. So we have a ton of very exciting things out now and coming out in the future.
Very cool. Yeah, it's amazing to see how this space has evolved just in the last 2 years.
Yeah, we've actually just
2.5 years ago. It was.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yeah, we've actually there's some additional products that we're actually launching shortly, which is going to also give application developers the ability to actually develop on recording bots without having to go through the whole headache of being in the program and being certified and all that. So we're working as an OE with OEMs as well, where we actually have other recording companies using our technology in different ways to be able to deliver Teams recording in certain applications without having to go through the whole certification process.
That's great.
Michael, I have a follow-up on something you touched on. You were talking about Europe, maybe specifically Germany. Sometimes they have these 10-day retention policies where users' personal communications can't be kept for longer than 10 days. I've had to implement some of those policies in Teams chat and conversations, for example. So how does that work if a user is lumped into a retention policy for 10 days and then also gets somehow they're made part of a recording? I assume it's going to be recorded. But so do you at all look at any of the retention policy settings, or does the call recording trump all and say, well, they're in this recording policy or they were part of a conversation with someone else that needs to be recorded? How might that work, and is that changing? Or
yeah, so there are some additional filters that are coming in where you can restrict based on a UPN in the call. So you can say if this UPN's in a call, do not record the call. But typically our platform works separately. So you would set your retention policies at whatever they might be, 10 days, 20 days, 5 years, whatever it may be. And we do have a legal hold functionality as well within the platform, that if you discover within that window that there is a specific call that's needed for any legal reason or any other reason to retain, as long as you have the necessary rights and privileges within the platform, you can place a legal hold then that would ignore any retention policy that was set to a particular call. So you could technically, set a 10-day retention for everybody, and only those calls that are needed go and hold them for legal purposes. Otherwise, after 10 days, everything would get purged.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that.
I have one question just on the platform stuff that you were talking about, like unlocking other OEMs. Are you, and maybe I'm not familiar with this, but the recording APIs, is that also available for like the Azure communication services, or is it purely on the Teams side?
It's currently on the Teams side, but we do have some things looking at the communication service as well. And we're a development organization. I don't know if I should say this loud, but I would say 75% of our organization is development resources. So we like to be focused on development. We sell typically through channel. So we're utilizing and working with our channel partners to develop our market presence, but in the back end, we're really pushing hard on development.
Awesome. I mean, I really appreciate you coming on, Michael. I mean, I think it was really good to get an understanding. You guys have definitely done a significant amount of work in the past year. And I mean, there's obviously been a lot of bumps in the road and some changes that challenges that you guys have had to work through, obviously, with the new technologies and the different SKUs and stuff like that. So I think that's really good. And I really like the insight with regards to, like, you know, sort of what you guys are doing from a recording, what you see from like a future perspective on how that sort of call recording platform is going. So it's definitely really interesting topic, and I guess we'll definitely keep track of that as it goes along. But again, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for listening in, and hopefully we'll catch you on our next episode.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks. Take care. Thank you.